Hello, BookTube. Recently, Daniel at Guilty Feet made a fascinating video where he talked about 4 literary white whales. 4 works of literature out there that loom over him that he hasn't got to yet, but that maybe he's heard a lot about, or that he's been tempted and maybe put off for one reason or another. And his video caught on. I found it fascinating myself. I made a response video of my own of a kind, and we'll be getting to that. But a lot of other people did too. A lot of other people made videos talking about their own literary white whales. The books that have, for one reason or another, always been out there thwarting them, or maybe that they just don't think they're going to like. Those videos were fascinating. It turns out there were a lot more of them than I thought. This was pretty vile for a thing that's not a tag. And I made my own response video, but with me, it's not quite the same. Because when it comes to books, I don't tend to let grass grow under my feet. I don't tend to let some book be sitting out there that I know about, that I've heard about, that's been referenced in a bunch of other books, and then just not read it myself. With the result that the typical choosing field for literary white whales is sort of closed to me. If it's a canonical work of any kind, even the lower venial levels of canonization, I've probably read the book. And the higher up those levels you go, the more likely it is that I've read it many times, that I know it really well, that I've written about it, that I've taught it. So I don't draw my candidates from there, but I nevertheless am surrounded by white whales because there are books out there that I definitely want to get to. There are books out there that I definitely want to read. They are, in a sense, looming over me. Baby, what are you doing? Boy, you were stealing the show on lots of recent videos, aren't you? Come down here. Come down here and read that. Oh. Oh, goodness. It's Frieda yoga. Oh, stretch those glutes, baby. The strangest things happen on this channel. But anyway, as I was saying, my white whales are definitely out there. But they are forthcoming books. The remit that I've sort of set for myself for my reading is new releases in the American book market. So I'm always hunting for white whales. There are always books out there that I know are coming that I haven't got yet. I haven't got my hands on them, haven't got an e-copy, so I haven't experienced them, and I very much want to. I do not police the American book market of new releases out of a sense of arid duty. I do it because I very, very much love it. It very, very much intrigues me. The fact that I never know what's coming, and that it's an infinite variety. So I thought that I would show 4 more of those white whales. Of course, I could do it every day. I could show 4 every day from now till the end of time. That's the whole point of it. But I was prompted to do this by a follow-up video that Daniel made on his own channel. I'll leave a link to it down below. One of his literary white whales was George Orwell's 1984. And in my own first response to his video, I said that the fact that that a grown man anywhere in the 21st century had not read that book seemed to me almost inconceivable. And Daniel took that as book shaming and promptly got himself a copy and read it. And, you know, his response to 1984, reading 1984 as not only an old man, but a bitterly old man, was thrilling. It put a smile on my face that's going to be there for the rest of the day. Because as far as I'm concerned, his response video to 1984, I'll leave a link to that as well, is purely what we're about here on BookTube. It's a pure example of what wouldn't be in your life if it weren't for BookTube. And I don't mean here Steve book shaming you. I mean this sense of weird, disjointed community where the people that you watch, these voices that you've let into your life, can be that thing that tips you over into finally reading book X, Y, or Z. We've all had those things, those little tipping factors in our lives in the past, but I don't think we've ever had them, so many of them and so concentrated as they are on BookTube, where in the course of any given day, some video that is not intending to preach to you, it's not intending to browbeat you, it's not threatening to divorce you, it might not have that intent at all, will be the thing that makes you think, you know, it's high time I finally read that book. Or, I've never heard about that book before, and now all I want to do is read it. I love that aspect of BookTube probably more than any other. And it happens to me too. All the time. It happens to me too. Just, was it this morning? I didn't actually sleep last night, so I it's been sort of a constant show here for a long time. So I'm having trouble demarcating when this. I think it was yesterday. I watched a video by a booktuber full of energy, full of vigor. I'm sure that this particular booktuber would block me from watching their channel if they could. I'm sure that they would consider me Satan incarnate, but I don't care about those things anymore. And they enthused about a book that I know is garbage. And my reaction is not condescension when I see that. When I see someone enthusing about a book that isn't any good, like, for instance, if, I don't know, 3 channels every day, day in and day out, month in and month out, year in and year out, enthuse about Blood Meridian by Cormac McCarthy, I know for a fact that that book is bad. I know that Cormac McCarthy has never written a good book. When I see a channel go on about The Road, once upon a time, when I started BookTube, I would have had the initial reaction of, well, no, here, let me send you a doctoral dissertation on why your opinion is wrong. Or in the case of The Road, I've made 4 half-hour-long videos detail anatomizing how bad it is. I don't have that reaction anymore. Instead, I'm far more biddable. I'm far more open to letting that enthusiasm work on me, even with a book that I know is garbage, because of how charming the enthusiasm is. That happened to me either early this morning before dawn or yesterday with a booktuber who went on and on about a book that I know I don't like. And I bet that the next time I see a $1 copy of that book at the Brattle, I'm going to get it and give it a reread, and that person's going to be on my mind. That person's enthusiasm is going to be on my mind. I'm not going to think I missed anything. I try real hard not to miss important things in books, especially if I'm rereading them. But rather in terms of if it can spark that kind of enthusiasm, well, that might be reason enough to give it a revisit. That's not a case ender. Quite often, a bad book will spark lots of enthusiasm, including lots of enthusiasm on BookTube. Oh my God, I see probably a dozen such videos a day, where the enthusiasm does not come from a buried quality in the book. It comes from a fact that a lot of us don't like to talk about, which is that quite a few readers just haven't read all that much. They just haven't read all that much. So an element that is very, very poorly done and also explicitly ripped off in book X that they're reading is done much better in book Y, which was the source of it all for that author, and they just don't know that book Y exists. That's all. Nevertheless, when it's not that, sometimes that enthusiasm can lead me to new reading experiences. So, and I'd be willing to bet that this is a case of that. I'd be willing to bet that I checked, and I don't actually have a paper copy of 1984 by George Orwell. I don't actually have a copy of it. I don't even think I have an ebook of it. But I'd be willing to bet the next time I see one, I will get it and reread it because of Daniel's amazing video about it. I'll leave a link to his video about it. It'll push you over the edge. If you haven't read 1984, it'll push you over the edge as well. But I wanted to give you 4 more white whales of mine. I've got 1 million white whales. They swarm like minnows. 4 more books that are coming up that I haven't got yet. Haven't got my hands on them yet. Haven't read them yet. The first one is this one. This is Descendants of a Lesser God. Which is a really good title. It'd be nice if all works of scholarly history had titles like that. Oh my God, what's going on with the lighting? Oh my God, can't even see that. Oh my God, that's even worse. Oh no. Well, you're going to have to use your imagination just a bit. This is a study of one province of the Upper Kingdom of Egypt, of ancient Egypt. A province down in the south that bordered on Nubia, and so was a constant friction point of war. And this is the kind of study that goes on in historical studies all the time, right on the borderline of where history meets archaeology, where you've got an expert. This author is an expert on this particular region, this particular sub-kingdom of ancient Egypt and its particular regional capital. He's there at the digs. He's unearthing the pieces, or the bits and pieces, the tiny regional records that won't probably make it into a big narrative history of ancient Egypt, even of this period. But there are tons and tons of granular details. And it's nice when they appear in a book, instead of inaccessible professional journals that I might be able to get a copy loaned to me from the Boston Public Library if I could figure out which journal it is that the particular scholar is publishing it. But better by far for it to be a book. And because then it's accessible to me and also accessible to anybody else. And I can't wait to see. This will not have any major sweeping effect on those grand narratives of ancient history, but it'll be full of people. It'll be full of people who've been dead for 3,000 years. It'll be full of their concerns, the stuff that kept them up at night, and all the stuff that was touching on their lives. Can't wait. I love this sort of ground-up history. Then let's see here. Okay, this next one dovetails with Book Trek 2023, which is a summer of Trek. It's 3 months of Star Trek literature that we're doing. Vin at Revenant Reads and a few other co-hosts. I'm one of the co-hosts. We're reading Star Trek all summer long. Mostly Star Trek fiction, which comes in giant bales. You can get just endless bales of Star Trek fiction in all the iterations of the show, in all kinds of different voices and registers, series and standalone books, you name it. But Book Trek 2023, the Summer of Trek, has 2 away missions as well. One is the same away mission as always, which is feel free to read a work of actual science. But the other away mission for 2023 is to read a nonfiction work by a person connected with Star Trek. The great granddaddy of them all would be Star Trek Lives. But there have been lots of others since then. Star Trek stars have made books. Production people have given production diaries and whatnot. And there aren't many new Star Trek novels that come out anymore. They used to come out like a fire hose when Star Trek had 4 franchises on TV at the same time, when you couldn't avoid it, when it had multi-million-dollar movies in the theater. It used to be there was a fire hose of books. There isn't anymore. I think there's 1, maybe 2 Star Trek novels coming out in 2023, the whole length of it. But I'm going to read them, not just because I'm a huge fan of Star Trek, but also because they fall within the remit of what I'm talking about. They fall within the boundaries of the shape of the reading that I've given for myself. They are new releases in a genre that interests me in the American book market. So I'm going to do my away missions anyway. I'm not going to let any popular press science works get away from me. There's one on this list. But also the other Book Trek away mission. There's also this. Make It So, a memoir by Patrick Stewart, who is 330 years old in 2023. These stories that make up this book, Patrick Stewart could no more write a book than he could sprout wings and fly to the moon. He's an imbecile. But he's had an enormously long and varied acting career. And he's immensely likable and immensely friendly. And like most actors, he may forget the current given name of his current wife. He will certainly forget his anniversary. But he will never forget a good story. Never. And the stories, is true with actors and virtually nobody else, certainly not writers, the stories will get better as they go along. In other words, they'll change. They'll change over time, yes, but they'll get better as they go along. This book, I hope, is that. The author was a personal survivor of the French Revolution. He doesn't have many years left to him. So I would hope that whoever wrote this and maybe sat down with Sir Patrick for hours and hours to get these stories out on paper. I'm hoping they went for that instead of thinking this will be, volume 1 or whatever. I'm hoping that this is just a distillation of a ton of those great theater stories from decades and decades in front of live audiences and on TV. We shall see. Typically speaking, I didn't want to throw any water on a Book Trek away mission, but typically speaking, these books are unendurably bad, just absolutely awful. And I have a fear, of course, that this one will be that way. We will see. It could be great. I mean, I don't mean to be grandiose here, but if you gave me access to Sir Patrick and a tape recorder of my own, I could make a great book. I would even call it Making It So if I had to. I would call it that, but I know exactly how to make this book great. It's just a question with these memoirs, will the person do that or will they not? Will they do it or will they not? You never know. You can never tell. With a celebrity memoir, you can never tell, not until you've tried it. But I will. It's a white whale out there. I'm certainly not going to let it go by. Then this next one, this author wrote a book on Fremont the Pathfinder. It's a figure I find incredibly fascinating. He wrote a book on, I think we saw it on this channel, a book on Fremont the Pathfinder and his wife. And now he has stepped up his game, stayed in the same time period. This is Steve Inskeep, and he's written a book on Abraham Lincoln. Differ we must. I gather from what I've been able to read about this that it's a political study of Lincoln, of his political savvy at being the elected president of a country in the middle of a civil war. There have been a few books on that subject in the last 20 years. Not a lot of them have been very good. I get my hopes up with every Lincoln book. There's still a lot to write about this figure, despite the fact that, a Library of Congress has been written about him already. There's still a lot to be written about him. I want to stress here that all of the good stuff that is written about this figure is written outside the bounds of hagiography, which means that 99% of that Library of America, that Library of Congress collection of books doesn't count. Almost everything that's been written about Abraham Lincoln has been a hagiography, and this could easily be that. I don't know one way or another. I don't think Steve Inskeep is an actual scholar of history. I think he's something else. I don't remember. The last book that he wrote, the book about Fremont, didn't strike me as a scholarly work. I liked parts of it. You don't usually fare well writing a book about Lincoln if you're not a Lincoln scholar. Simple way to put it. Because he's so accessible to the Joe Scarborough crowd. He is so accessible to, a teary Glenn Beck rolling out of bed and deciding he wants to order a flunky to write a book about how, we just need more Lincolns. That sort of thing. The kind of thing that'll get you a tub thumping 15 minutes on, Morning Joe, where Joe and Mika sit by all admiring because they loved Lincoln when he used to come on the show. And the guest just talks about how, he's just the greatest. He's just the greatest. Books like that are a waste of time. And there's virtually no figure in history that elicits more of them than this. So if this is one of those books, I'll know in the first 5 minutes. I'll know right away. I might read the whole thing anyway. I usually don't DNF books, but that's always a great heaving sigh of disappointment when that happens. Because I don't want that. If you step outside of hagiography and actually study this figure, easily the most interesting figure in American history, you get a lot of interesting stuff. You get a lot of you can have a lot of really good insights. But not if you're hero worshiping. So we shall see. We'll see how this works. Sorry, the baby bean is right next to me. She's being awful cuddly this morning. I'm assuming that it's chillier in this room than I think, because otherwise I don't think she'd be this way. And then we'll do one more white whale here before we finish up. I could do these forever. There are white whales on my horizon all the time. This is a white whale, but it's not a whale. It's a land animal. This is, I can't quite make out the author's name. The picture's a little blurred, but this is What the Bears Know. And this is a sort of a combination autobiography and field guide of a bear expert who studies them in... not quite sure where. It's in California, just outside of Sierra National Park, National Forest. I'm not quite remembering the town that he centers on, but it's in that area. And that area, on the foothills of Sierra Nevada, is rife with black bears. Rife, they're everywhere. And this guy has gone and studied them. I think he's even been dubbed the Bear Whisperer. And this is a book about his advocacy. He advocates for them, as he should. I don't have a lot of fond memories about encountering bears in the wild myself, but nevertheless, they should be advocated for. We should have as many bears as possible. And if that's an inconvenience for human civilization, let human civilization contract a little. Make room around them, rather than get them out of the way and put bounties on their heads. They were here first. But I don't know the tone that this will take. Again, I don't know. It's all a question of execution. If the author starts off this book and starts telling wheezy old fireside stories that are mostly about him and what kind of boots he wore and the weird friends that he had and their weird idiosyncrasies, and every other chapter manages to tell you something about black bears, I probably won't be all that interested. Whereas if it's the kind of book that I can easily imagine it being, a great natural history of, highly personal I would imagine, but a great natural history of black bears in America, black bears even in a certain region of California, fantastic. I'd happily read that. I haven't read a book like that in a couple of years. So there you go. What the Bears Know. Bears mostly know about eating. and also, if it's grizzlies, also killing. but we'll see. It's the ambivalent nature of my relation with bears, even black bears, who are not nearly the package that grizzly bears are. It's my ambivalent relationship with them that will make the book even more interesting. You're generally luckier if you're out on a trail in California or Canada or wherever. You're generally luckier if you encounter a black bear. Not generally, you are luckier if you encounter a black bear. The odds are overwhelmingly in favor of a black bear simply running away from you, especially if you tell it to. If you raise your arms and raise your voice and make a loud noise, make yourself look bigger, then even a black bear who maybe had the idea of making trouble and seeing if you would fall, if you fall down, maybe they could rip your guts out and eat some of those guts. Even a black bear who maybe vaguely had that idea, the minute you show a little fight, a little resistance, they'll almost always drop the idea and just literally turn tail and run. They'll literally spin on their humps and run in the other direction. They don't want anything to do, usually they don't want anything to do with you, because keep in mind, a grown human is a big animal. We don't think so because we automatically think of charismatic animals like whales or elephants. But a grown human is one of the biggest animals on Earth. If you look at all the animals on Earth. And black bears, any animal, most animals are going to look at the size of an animal and think that's not worth the trouble. It's only the animals that don't think that are going to be a problem for you. Adult moose are not going to think that. They are not going to care how big you are. And especially grizzly bears. And this won't always be a question of coloration. We call black bears, but they can be brown. They can look just like grizzlies, except for the physiognomy. Grizzly bears have a big hump on their shoulder. And they have a dished face. Their face is broader. It's not pointed like a black bear's. It's dished. The forehead comes down and the snout comes out like that. And also grizzly bears are twice as big or more. They're gigantic animals. And like with moose, there's something wrong with them. They are generally in a homicidal frame of mind. So if you encounter a black bear on a hiking trail, well, it's going to be dicey. You want to follow basic rules. Unhitch your bear spray. You don't want to be unhitching your bear spray when the bear has decided to charge you. You want to unhitch your bear spray first, but don't fire it. Your bear spray is no good if the bear is, like, for instance, across a library room from you. The bear has to be on top of you for it to be of any good whatsoever. Its good is marginal even in a case like that, but it's totally useless if you fire it when you see the bear. The bear has to be approaching you for that to work. You want to unhitch it, definitely. You want it ready. You also want to make sure you get kids out of the way. Don't put your kids on your shoulders to make you look taller. Take your kid in your arm. Make sure that your kid is near you in your physical control, rather than off somewhere and I'll deal with them once I've dealt with the bear. Because if a child slips and falls, or cries and runs, you want your child under your direct personal control the minute you're aware of a bear in the area. But if you do all of that, and you go from, you're supposed to be singing and making noises as you walk through bear country anyway. But if you see a bear, or you're pretty sure that one's around, you can hear one. You start saying, hey bear, outside, out loud. Nice, long, strong, confident voice. Not screamed. Don't scream it. No high-pitched sounds. But a nice, long, strong, confident voice. And then if you see the bear and it seems to be interested in you, change that to full-throated shouting. Again, not screaming. Full-throated shouting. Chances are very, very good that with a black bear, they will turn and run. That they won't be interested in you at all. Unless it's an adolescent with something to prove or an old male with a tooth problem. But the chances of you meeting an animal that fits that description are incredibly rare. Incredibly rare. You should have the proper caution. If you see a bear on a hiking trail and the bear sees you and is interested in you, that is a 4-alarm fire. You should be paying an enormous amount of attention to that. Plenty of times, if you spend a lot of time out in bear country, plenty of times you'll see bears and they're not interested in you. They don't even know that you're there. They know you're there. You know they know you're there. But they're not paying you any attention. They're not reacting to you in any way. But if a bear is looking at you and paying attention to you, then you need to drop everything and defuse that situation one way or another. Most black bears will run. Grizzly bears tend not to. They don't. If they're interested in you, that's really, really bad. A big grizzly bear usually won't be interested in you. Usually they will know you're there long before you know they're there, and they'll leave you alone. They won't even know you're around them. But if you encounter one on a path, on a trail of some kind, especially if, God forbid, it's a narrow trail, usually a big adult grizzly, unless it's a mother, a sow with cubs. But if it's a big adult grizzly, male or female, they'll usually not be interested in you. They'll usually just lumber right by you. They don't want any trouble, and they assume you don't want any trouble. But that sometimes isn't true. Sometimes they are interested in you. Sometimes they've seen you and they think, I might want to eat you. They'll almost never think you're a rival. I've heard some so-called bear experts say, if they don't want to rival, a male won't want to rival in the territory. Grizzly bears aren't dumb. They know you're not a grizzly bear. but they might want to eat you. If they show you concerted attention, they might want to eat you. Just pull you down and rip your guts out and eat them while you're still alive. And you can see them doing it, and you can hear them doing it. And then, oh my, oh my. But it sounds like what a bear knows is going to be concentrating on black bears, which is good. That's a fascinating study. There hasn't been a good popular study of black bears in quite a while. So anyway, those are 4 white whales. One of the black bears instead of white whales. But those are 4 white whales. I'd love to hear more of yours. Even if they're canonical, I'd love to hear more of them. No reason this little trend can't keep going. This is fascinating to me to learn what people have and haven't read and what they want to read and why they've been putting off that big classic of one kind or another. So let me know, and I'll wrap this up for now, and I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.